thank everyone for being here tonight as we get started on our Unite U-46 engagement session. So we will be working on boundary planning criteria and guidelines tonight. And we will also share some of the tools that we utilize when we initiate this work and move all the way, right, from start to finish. And then we will be asking you to give us some input and direction as we have these conversations this evening. In the fall, we brought forward recommendations to retire two of our oldest middle schools, Abbott Middle School and Ellis Middle School. This was approved by the Board of Education, as I mentioned, prior to winter break. We also brought forward recommendations for additions to Kenyon Woods and Kimball Middle School as well. And finally, the recommendation for the construction of a new middle school in Elgin. So when we look at McKinley and Washington and Lowry, we've made the recommendation to retire those buildings in June of 2027. So that's at the end of the 26-27 school year. We are currently researching considerations and options then for whether we are going to build new, renovate, bring forward additions to other buildings as well. We also brought forward some recommendations as well for three other elementary schools. Century Oaks, also located on the west side of Elgin, and a recommendation to retire Century Oaks, with consideration again whether there will be a rebuild, an addition, or renovations to other buildings to welcome students on the west side of Elgin to an updated elementary school. We've also made the recommendation to retire and rebuild then a school in Streamwood. Glenbrook is the building that we've recommended that we retire, and we are currently researching our abilities to rebuild on that plot of land for Glenbrook, or even the potential of another location in Streamwood for those students. And then finally, we made a recommendation as well to retire Hanover Countryside also. And again, we are working through all of those finalized recommendations to the Board of Education as far as what comes next in those neighborhoods to support and welcome our students. We also had a couple of other recommendations that came forward. One involves a feasibility study for Illinois Park Early Learning Center. It is located on the west side of Elgin. It's one of our newest elementary schools, and it's located at McLean and Wing Street. So because of where it's located currently, what the entrance and exit routes in and around the property look like, it can create some challenges. So our question is, can that be changed to improve traffic flow and make that an accessible site again to bring forward the potential of returning that location to an elementary school on the west side of Elgin. We see still a really solid and consistent enrollment in that area. So one of our questions, right, is that new elementary school in the northeast area of Elgin, as well as I referenced, potentially another elementary school or a new elementary school in Streamwood and Hanover Park area. So one of our considerations, though, goes back to Parkwood Elementary School. As we have continued to monitor, though, enrollment in that area, as well as visiting all of our buildings, we've identified that for now, our recommendation will be to continue to monitor Parkwood for possible consolidation in the future. So it's not a retirement and a rebuild, but we're going to monitor this area. And then finally, we had two other recommendations. The potential for additions and renovations at Harriet Gifford and Highland Elementary Schools, also on the west side of Elgin.
Once some of these decisions are made and we know where we're going to have schools and we know how many schools we're going to have in the district, then we're at a point where we can start redrawing boundaries. We are going to be asking you that as we go about this, what types of things should we be prioritizing? There's lots of different considerations, and we really want to hear from you. We'll share some of the work that was done previously, we'll share some of our thoughts, but we definitely want to get your feedback. That's really the point of these sessions. So the process then that will follow, here we are tonight, again reviewing some of the established criteria and getting your feedback and making any necessary adjustments or refinements to the criteria and the guidelines that we'll use to go about the work. And then the next thing that we'll do is share those recommendations with the Board of Education, including any changes that we recommend to the guidelines that were put in place the last time that U-46 set about looking at boundaries across the district. And then we'll be at a point, once we have those criteria determined, where then we can start actually drawing boundaries on maps and having some scenarios and some different versions of boundary maps that we could share in these types of sessions and then also share with the Board of Education. And then once our recommendations are presented to the board, we would ask for their approval. And then finally, once they would approve our recommendations, then we're able to share those out officially with the communities, with all the impacted families, neighborhoods, staff members, anyone else in U-46 that would be impacted by the changes. We would schedule a series of sessions where we'd go out and meet with parents, meet with students in the schools, and make sure that we did all of that more than a year in advance. So that's been our commitment all along, is that anytime there are going to be boundary changes, they will be announced, they will be approved, finalized, and announced a year or more in advance. So the board policies, there's 3 of them that have to do with attendance boundaries. The first is sharing enrollment projections every year. This is something that we typically do in the fall. The other board policy has to do with establishing boundaries and recommending any required changes. So it specifically asks administration to look at drawing boundary lines to ensure that we are not segregating students based on race or ethnicity. So that's something that we get into tonight in terms of an important consideration as we draw boundaries could be to have schools that represent the diversity of our district. And then the final board policy that I think at least maybe indirectly addresses establishing attendance boundaries has to do with working with local authorities around things like zoning and planning commissions. It really has to do with when we're doing additions, when we're doing new construction, and it's certainly something that we are doing now and that we'll continue to do to work with those local agencies. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go through one at a time, and these are the 10 guidelines that were listed in the report that the Enrollment Facilities Committee created in 2009-2010. But the first criteria then was when we look at capacities for each school, to exclude the mobile classrooms. And the way I take this means like get out of all the mobiles. We don't want any mobiles in U-46, okay? We had a lot more mobiles and a lot more mobile classrooms then than we do now, but the number is not 0 now. We still have buildings that have mobile classrooms. So I guess by listing this as a criteria, and this is one of the things we'd like to hear from you, is if one of the guidelines is get out of mobiles, have 0 mobiles in U-46, then we would know that that's something that we should plan for, and we would look at the capacities for these schools. We would not count those mobile classrooms as additional places to set up classrooms. So No Child Left Behind had very specific student groups that they asked that we would disaggregate the enrollments by. We could now choose to do different student groups, but I think the intention again here would be, as we look at our enrollments in the different buildings, should we be concerned at making sure that our schools are more represented, all of our schools are more representative of the diversity of our district. So the next one is distance and travel time of students from a school, okay? One of the things that we'll get into later certainly could be, do we have more neighborhood schools that are located right where there are clusters of population and more kids will be able to walk? Because then their travel time on a bus becomes 0, right? They're walking to a school. Versus, are we okay having kids riding a bus for a few miles to attend a more modern, updated school? Because that's certainly another way that we can serve our students. I talked about feeder school alignment. I hope this makes sense. This would just be the idea if you had a clean feeder pattern, every kid from, say, those 6 elementary schools at the bottom of the chart, they would all attend the same middle school, and then every kid from that middle school would all attend the same high school. That would be an example of a perfectly clean feeder pattern. If this is an important priority, we can do it, but it makes, I don't want to say it ties our hands, but it reduces some of our flexibility, I guess, in drawing boundaries, because we would be trying to assign entire elementary schools to the same middle school, entire middle schools to the same high school. But if that's a priority, we need to know that, because that has big implications on how the boundaries are drawn. Okay, and then the next one, maybe this is sort of the opposite, would be Instead, we could make sure that all of our boundaries honor natural boundaries such as wetlands, railroad tracks, forest preserves, main thoroughfares. We do this to a sense in U-46 today. We have very few school boundaries that say cross the Fox River. So are things like Route 59, McLean Boulevard. We don't have a lot of boundaries that cross those sort of main, very busy roads either. The opportunity for siblings to attend the same school, where this comes into play is if you have one student in the house who is not attending their assigned home school, based on their home address, because they're attending another school for gifted or for dual language or one of our magnet academies or specialized student services. The consideration then is, what do we do for the siblings in that house? Do we allow them to also attend the same school to make transportation and arranging schedules and stuff easier for the families? If we didn't do anything, if we kept all 38 elementary schools that we have now, this is what our capacity utilization would look like. And you see all the schools that are in the darker blue or the sort of royal blue there, those would all be running like 50 or 60% capacity. And then you see we still have a couple that are in the red or the pink, which are saying those schools are basically at or slightly above even their full capacity. So one of the things that we'd be looking to do as we redraw these boundaries is to balance that across the district. We really should have a lot of our schools running like 80-85% full. Okay, this one, I feel like this is a really important one, and it goes back to a point I made a few minutes ago, is stability of attendance boundaries and to avoid changes in 2 consecutive years. So this says 2 consecutive years, but I think I would extend this even to say, once we change a boundary, I would want to say that boundary is going to stay for that area for several years at least. Okay, so what we'd like you to do is get out the index cards with the ideas that you came to the meeting tonight with, or what ideas that you would like to see the district consider, and you're going to share your ideas with the others around the table. So after you all share your index cards and you jot down some of the new ideas that people at your table came with, then you as a group have to decide what are the top 5 criteria on your paper. The next one of these sessions will be together again with CAC in April, so please watch for more information on that. We hope to see you all there. Have a good night. Thanks very much.